Okay, it's 6:30. It's time for the planning board. Let me go back to our agenda. Hold on. No one would let me do that. Oh, shit. Okay. 6:30. Should open up the meeting. I want to thank everyone for coming who's watching us on TV. You have to raise your hand to be acknowledged by the board to ask a question or if we have any input. Anything else? Otherwise, you stay on mute. So we have 6:30 minutes. Has anyone had a chance to look at the minutes?
Yep, I have one quick question.
Okay.
So Marin, under item number 6, Barron Way, it says reference plan : and it looks like there was something else that was supposed to be there. So.
Oh, thank you. I'll just insert the name of the A&R, title of the A&R.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yep, and then just a simple typo under number 7. It says Two Hill Stated Green International. So instead of tated or stated. Can't even talk. Okay, yep, that's
Okay.
it.
Thank you. Oh, you missed one.
I did.
At the header, it says the minutes of the 9th or something. So Lucia found that one.
All right.
So,
Yeah, you got to put little mistakes in there to keep Anna on her toes.
there you go.
Other than that, all right. So then I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
That's
I'll
correct.
make the motion.
As corrected. Excuse me. Sorry.
I'll make the motion.
Move second.
Second,
All those in favor? Anna,
yes.
Jerry. I think that thumbs up.
Yes. Aye. Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Mark. You want to vote for me? Oh, all right. I'll say yes then.
And Jeff is here too, as well.
I did. That's Jeff.
Okay, sorry.
Muted, but he nodded his head. I saw it. All right. So next is. All right. Why am I having trouble going back and forth? K Estates bond reduction. You have the worksheet, Mara, and I don't have it.
Yeah, just a moment. The Chestnut.
I thought we were talking about, it says K Estates.
Oh, okay. Town meeting preparation. I've got the whole list: Bennett Orchard, Chestnut Lane, Cooper Farm Estates, Jerky Farm Estates, and K Estates. That's the B under 6:30. All the developers seem to be rushing to get pavement down, finish up the punch lists, and get their draft, if not final, as-built plans into the select board office so that select board can schedule the public hearing on street acceptances in order for these roadways to make it to fall town meeting. I'm going to ask for a little bit of leeway in the timelines on this, but most of the work seems to be moving forward very well.
So we have to schedule a meeting for ourselves so we can vote whether or not to accept them or not.
Well, the next planning board meeting is after the close of town meeting warrant. So based on your direction at the last meeting, we're trying to move forward with all 5 of those.
Okay, but we have to schedule a meeting anyway to hear whether we're going to proceed.
Well, you're going to provide input to the select board public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, is the process. But yeah, you get to decide at that point if you're ready for a positive recommendation.
Okay. Any questions on that one?
So just a quick one. Will the select board be accepting those at the August 24th meeting or September 14th meeting? Do we have the date when they'll be doing that?
The timeline is for the applications to go to the select board office on the 24th. And that would allow the select board to open public hearings on the September 14th meeting.
Okay.
If needed, they can push that back to a meeting later in September or early October, but we'll set the early deadline in the hopes of some of them making the early deadline.
Are we gonna be able to hear them on the, when's our meeting, the 10th? September, when are we meeting?
Or, yeah, the September 10th meeting or the October meeting.
Okay, all right,
So, and planning board doesn't have to have a hearing. It's just a meeting to make a recommendation.
okay. Okay, so we're good with that. All right, let me see if I can get to, if we can screw this up one more time.
Chestnut Lane.
Why am I having so much trouble today? Okay. Oh, I can't get back to the agenda. Oh, wait a sec, there it is. Okay, so 7:45.
No, this one actually is the recommendation, a request from Colby Field for a.
Oh, yeah, so that's the beginning of our meeting. So do we have any other board business?
Let's see, you had just signed the bills and the payroll.
All right, thank you. I did talk to Nick at Water Department about getting us the verbiage and everything for their bylaw for the 5G. To get it over to us so we can get a chance to look at it, to get it to town meeting for October town meeting.
Mhm.
So he'll be sending us that over, Jerry.
Yeah.
Try to mimic what they have, but yeah, it's all done.
Good.
We have to just get it over. So we're pretty much all set with that. We met with Mara and I did the Affordable Housing Trust. We're talking about bringing in some developers to talk about partnerships with the town. We're talking about the disposition of the Durkee farm, about the town taking it over, potentially maybe doing some affordable housing out there. We have to find out where the historical commission is with what they're looking to take the house because it's historical. So we're working on that. See, what else are we talking about? We're getting ready to start our first meeting for the Littleton Station. I guess I got to get sworn in for that. Other than that, everybody else is good. Elisa, you're all set with that?
Yep.
All right, so I'll get sworn in probably Monday of next week, something like that, Monday, Tuesday. We have obviously executive session a little later on that we can discuss what's going on with that. Chris will give us an overview of that. Am I missing anything, Maren?
Sounds about it. I think we're
That's
waiting
about
for Colby to come on for the Chestnut Lane discussion.
Oh, are we going to squeeze him in before 6:45?
No, he's on the agenda.
I didn't see him there.
Just pinged me for when he should get on. I said, now.
Okay, is he around or?
Not waiting to get in, so.
You want to discuss this before he gets in there, or you want to wait for him?
That's up to you guys.
Me, guys. It's up to me. There.
It's up to you. I will share the,
I have to figure out where to lead the flock. Okay.
there's the,
Okay, so there's the Chestnut Farms. The issue is maybe doing a joint release of the funds so that he can get the paver in there to pave it because he doesn't have the money to pave it. I don't know if he's here yet or not, but
How does that actually work with the town? I mean, just approve it and a check is cut? I mean, how does that realistically work?
well, we've done it in a couple of rare circumstances. It's not the ideal way to do it, but if we want the road done and we have the money set aside, the money was set aside by another developer, and I guess Colby kind of stepped into his shoes. So we have, what do we have left, Martin? 40,000?
yeah, 46 plus interest.
46. So,
So it's a little over $47,000
and
in that bond.
Colby
And
doesn't
plus
have the
the-
money to pay the paver, so
Mhm.
we could, if we so wanted to, we could do a joint venture with them so that we cut the check to the paver and Colby so that they both have to sign it once the job is done and inspected and approved. That way we know it gets done. We know it's, we have Chris or somebody come out or Bree come out and take a look at it before we release the check. That way it gets done. It's not the ideal way to do it. We have done it in the past. I don't know what the board's feeling is on it, but this is a situation that's been going on for about 8 or 10 years. Try to get the final course of pavement on, get the structures fixed. This is the shared, the actual, the road that's going to eventually be accepted by the town up there off of Harvard Road, the little cul-de-sac. Then the shared driveway comes off of that. So the suggestion has been to try to negotiate with the paver and the developer to come up with a solution to make sure the job gets done and both parties are satisfied. So one of the suggestions was to do tri-party payment. And so I'm opening up to the board to discuss, see what they think about it. Anna, I'll start with you because, you know, it's not the ideal way to do it, but at least it assures that it gets paved and we move the process forward.
Well, so I think the last meeting, there were some issues about repairs for the culvert. Do we know if that got?
Well, yeah, all of that has to be taken care of before it actually gets paved. And
So the culvert is on the shared residential driveway. It's not on this driveway. There's a separate bond for the shared residential.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, Brian, can you help me with that? I can't see who just entered.
That was Carolyn's iPhone. I don't
Oh,
think that's him, but
mhm.
okay.
It's a very good question. No, the message I got from Colby was from an iPhone, so.
I don't want me. No.
Anyway, so Anna, you had asked about process. The process is I just work with the town treasurer and the Colby and the representative from the paving company to get the check cut the way the Mark described.
So I'm viewing that. Okay. Do we have Colby on here, Myron, or is it still just us?
I don't see Colby mine.
Okay. Well, I guess so. Oh, they were back. So what does the board want to do? I mean, do we want to work with the developer to try to get the road paved and everything fixed? And if he wants to bring us an estimate with the tri-party agreement, that we would entertain that, or want to just have him pave it and then it's his problem, Mark?
Mark, I'd like to defer to your experience in this since you've been doing this for a long time.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
I mean,
We've done-
10
we've done
years,
it-
why don't we just get it done with?
Exactly. We've done it a couple of times, and we're still the one controlling the money. We work on an agreement where they bring in an estimate, make sure everybody's on board with it, make sure the scope is good. Maybe have Green come out and look at it before we release the funds, and then we release the check to both parties, and both have to sign it and sign off on it. And at least we get it paved, we get what we want. And it's not a perfect solution to it, but we do have the money. We do, we get it done.
Well, wait. Let's run through this. So he comes in, gives us what, a plan? We cut him a check from his bond and then he paves it?
No, we don't pay it till it's done.
Well, then I don't get what's the ask? I mean, what is the risk to us?
There's no risk, but that's not the way we normally do it. We're actually guaranteeing payment to the paving company by doing it.
No, they're guaranteeing that they're going to pave it by doing it. There's no risk to us.
No, we have to actually release the money to the paving company. once the job is done and we have either Green or Chris started, approve what was done out there, and we release the check, and then the paving company gets paid.
But
I'm
Jerry,
saying there's no risk to us. He's using us.
No, no
basically
risk
as a-
to us,
He's using
no.
us as a bridge, as a bank. I mean, that's,
Right. There's no
I
risk.
don't have a problem with
I
it.
don't have a problem with that at all, as long as we're not on the hook.
Okay, I just want to make sure everybody's good with it. It's not the normal way we do things, but we have done it in the past when developers get into trouble or a new developer takes over from an old one. So,
You know, I think I'd be comfortable doing it if Colby was actually on this call. The fact that we haven't been able to get anybody from this development to show themselves raises a concern for me. So you all might be comfortable, but I'm going to abstain from this vote until
Okay.
I see somebody.
Myron, he was supposed to be on the call, correct?
Correct.
Okay, no,
I mean, just to be clear, what you're describing is we're gonna basically release the funds upon completion of the payment, and the paving company's gonna do it because we're a government,
well,
basically,
we're guaranteeing,
town, and we're guaranteeing the funds.
yes.
So we're guaranteeing my understanding is the cost of the paving is going to be more than what we're releasing, but they know they'll get paid at least what we're releasing.
Right, so the work's gonna get done, they're gonna get partial payment. We'll have exhausted the bond, is that correct at that point?
No, I'm recommending that you hold 4,500 left in that bond, and then plus there's still the bond for the upper lots.
Right. I don't see the risk. I mean, I don't see any risk at all, other than them not doing it, and then they don't get paid.
Well, yeah, they don't. The town is still not releasing building permits on one lot that is controlled.
So this is in lieu of, Colby stepped in and took control from the original developer to take that lot. And the original developer told him he was responsible to finish the road, is what
Mhm.
I've been told.
Yep, yep.
Part of
And
his
the work has been moving forward. Green's been quite happy with the work that's been done.
So, I guess, so we're looking for a little guidance to tell Myron what to tell him tomorrow. So, want to make a motion that we approve the tri-party agreement subject to an estimate from the,
Well, yeah, let's not make it that difficult. If we could just release the amount of 42,100 to the paving company and to Colby Field.
Upon the upon
on the,
the
Upon
completion of paving.
and inspection and acceptance.
Yeah.
Okay. That good?
Yeah,
Yep.
No one is going to abstain, so Jerry,
So I'll make a motion that we approve the request based on the conditions we previously stipulated, which are that the paving is completed, that it's inspected.
uh-oh.
uh-oh.
We lost Jerry.
Well, I'll finish the sentence. Is inspected and approved by a third party. All right. Delisa, are you good with that?
Yep.
You made a motion. Do you want to second that?
Yeah, I'll second it.
All right. All right. Jeff, are you in favor of that, or
yes,
Delisa?
Yes.
Jerry? Suspended animation. Jerry, are you good? I'll vote yes. Can we get back to Jerry, I guess? Wink your eyes, Jerry.
now he's gone.
Oh,
He's gone. Now we have Jeff.
You chased him away, Mark. Oh
I
my
did,
God.
Jeff. You vote for Jerry. Say yes.
I'd say yes.
All right. I guess.
If I like just show my
We need-
forehead.
We need Jerry. Yeah, thanks. We need Jerry back for this next one, though. Where'd he go?
oh, Jerry.
We have anything else, Martin? Are we good? Ready for
Yep,
16?
I'm good with that. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for putting that all together.
So we'll give
We
Jerry
need
a
to put
few
it back
minutes to.
and be in the middle. He's in the middle of the TDR also. So
Yes, where is that?
there he is. Yes.
Yay, Jerry's back.
It's incredibly sudden and catastrophic.
You got to pay the bill, Jerry?
I just totally blue screened. Just like that.
All right. So we have 6:45. Jerry and Mark are going to walk us through transfer of development rights. And we're going to, all right, who wants to start? Mark, do you want to start?
Well, I mean, just to tee it off, I mean, transfer of development rights, it's a bylaw that we're contemplating bringing before the town. Its primary purpose is for preservation of open space, farmland, other sensitive areas that we would like to preserve, and it provides an incentive for landowners to utilize it as a tool to help with that preservation. But I also want to point out that unlike other bylaws, this is not you are not compelled to use TDR, right? If we put a TDR bylaw in place, you don't have to use it as a developer or as a landowner. So it's an option, it's a tool, if you will, an optional tool to further the goal of preservation of open space, undisturbed open space, and to facilitate the movement of housing density and other types of density to targeted areas within the town. That's, I think, in accordance with the master plan. I don't know. What do you think about that, Mark? Yep. So that's the overhead view.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, I had prepared, per the board's request, materials for your review, the goal of which was, once you had reviewed this, this would be an information packet that would be sent to other boards and commissions in town so that they could be brought up to speed on the work that the planning board has been doing. And they could then become party to the discussions and give input to the planning board as you continue to look at the potential bylaw. So what I thought we could do tonight was to quickly go through the memo that was prepared and sent to the planning board by me and by Josh Fiala, who is my colleague, who is also on the Zoom call with me tonight and who's waving. And then
I'll share that now.
and then we can go through the actual wording of the bylaw. So my question really is, do you want, because if Maren shows her screen, then we can't see anybody. But I think it's a lot better to have you actually looking at the text as we go, so that in the event that you haven't had a chance to look at it, you can say, oh yeah, that works, or no, I don't like the wording of that.
What's the clock? When are we finishing up this discussion? Maren, what's the schedule?
That's 7:30.
So we got a half hour. So do you want to, cause the bylaw is not that long. So do you think it's worthwhile to just run through it top to bottom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it would be helpful to actually have a quick look at the memo and then the bylaw. I'm not going to go into the details necessarily on the bylaw, but we can talk about a couple of issues that I think that the board will want to weigh in on. So anyways.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we split it? Let's see if we can get through this piece in 10 minutes and then leave the rest of the balance of the time for Q&A. I just want to make sure there's enough time for discussion.
Okay. That sounds good. Now being 6:54. All right. Timer starts. Okay, so page 1, which Maren has up here right now, is basically just an introduction to the transfer of development rights. Talks a little bit about the grant, describes what TDR is, notes that the board has been looking at this, the fact that there's an associated March PowerPoint that describes the transfer of development rights in detail. It describes in brief, and now we're moving on to the second page, Maren. It describes the survey of the town residents to get feedback on where folks thought it would be best to preserve areas in the town, where folks thought it would be best to increase the density in town to move the transferred rights to those areas. And then we get into the financial analysis. So it's the next section down describing that and how we're using the assessor's records for the sending area valuation for when we were doing the financial feasibility analysis. Talks a little bit more about the receiving area analysis. And for those of you who are very interested in the details, I did send along the Excel spreadsheet this afternoon, and Maren has that. I believe she posted it. But this describes how we went about the financial feasibility analysis and came to the conclusion, bottom line conclusion is that a transfer of development rights program can work in Littleton with a 1-to-1 ratio of one development right being moved from a farm and being moved to an area. In this case, we sampled the area near the train station. That financially does work if the density of development in the train station receiving area is somewhere between 10 and 15 units per acre. Below that, there's not enough density to justify the expenses. And if you get closer to the 15 units per acre, then that also provides some degree of flexibility in how much the developer can pay for the development rights. Because as you recall, this is a market-driven, privately operated system where the developer purchases development rights and then moves them to where they feel they can make enough money in the development in order to justify that moving. Okay, so that's the bottom line. At this point, I'd like to just shift straight to the bylaw itself. So that goes on to the next page. Okay, so this is the wording of the draft bylaw. This bylaw was prepared using bylaws from several other towns which have TDR bylaws in Massachusetts, also using the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs Smart Growth, Smart Energy Toolkit. They have a sample bylaw. Also based on my discussions with Kurt Gartner, who is one of the assistant secretaries at EEA, and he is very conversant in TDR, one of the folks that I depend on for bouncing ideas off of. So first section of the bylaw basically just describes the bylaw, the main purpose of which is to preserve the lands, farms, woodlands, natural habitats, water resources, etc., and to transfer that development right to an area where the town wants to see additional density. I've noted in this case that it can be a private transaction. I did include in this edition of the bylaw the possibility of payment to the town in lieu of developer purchasing development rights, just in case they could not find somebody who wants to sell when they want to buy. So we can get more into that in a little bit. Maren, if you can move it down a little bit, then we get into the definitions section. You've seen these before. I will not dwell on those at all. Top of the next page, the development right yield from the sending area. In this case, I wanted to provide two options for a developer and for the board to make life as easy as possible. Option one would be for a developer to come in with a sketch plan and say, this piece of farmland is 35 acres. There's no wetlands on it. Here's how I would lay it out. And they could just quickly sketch it out. And you, as the planning board, who are used to seeing subdivisions all the time, could look at it and say, yep, okay, we believe that. You know, we know that there's no wetlands there. We know that's all perkable soils up there. They could get 10 units up there. So that's 10 development rights. The flip side, another alternative is a calculated yield for residential units. And this is something that many communities use when they're doing a cluster bylaw, where you can calculate how many units you could get rather than laying them out. What you do is you remove the wetlands, you remove the slopes, you remove any easements on the land for pipelines or conservation restrictions. You then remove some land. In my case here, I've suggested 15% to account for roadways and the odd lot sizes that will be generated by a subdivision. So this provides an alternative. So there's two ways for the planning board or a developer to determine how many development rights would be generated by a conservation restriction on a particular piece of farmland. Marion, if we could move on. Then I did delegate the special permit granting authority to the planning board. It made much more sense than to give it to the zoning board of appeals, because you guys are the ones who deal with subdivisions all the time. You would therefore be the ones who would be able to determine the development yield from the sending area. And you also would understand the mixed use overlay area in the receiving zone. So that made the most sense to give it to the planning board. The eligibility for the TDR receiving area, what I did in this case was say, we want this to be a reasonable size parcel that you're going to be working with, 3 acres in size, and that it would have to be within, in this case, excuse me, the Littleton Train Station Village overlay zone, a new zone that would be created specifically for receiving development rights. The eligibility for TDR sending areas. Now, this is one of the questions that I have for the board. Under this, A is all of the chapter lands. This is your Chapter 61 Forest Land Assessment Program and your Chapter 61A Agricultural Lands Assessment Program. And what I said was that it had to be at least 5 acres in size and then be enrolled in one of those two programs. You don't want a half acre here or an acre there. You want this to be a meaningful size piece of property that is preserved through this TDR. So that's A. And that is, by the way, the item that scored the highest on the polling in the survey. Everybody wants to preserve the farms and the forests. Next down would be the aquifer zones, but everybody wanted to preserve farms and forests. So, and my item B here is your aquifer protection zones. And the reason I did that was just to provide you with the option. This is obviously a much larger area of the town. It includes some farmland that is not under Chapter 61A. But my recommendation initially would be just do the chapter lands when you first do this bylaw, because that would emphasize that you really want to see those areas preserved. And then in 5 years, if this is a great success and you've preserved a lot of those chapter lands, then you could do an amendment to the bylaw and add in the other lands that are within the aquifer protection zone. Marion, if you could move down a little bit. I did something that was included in several of the other bylaws, which is to say that town-owned lands could be either a sending area or a receiving area if it's approved by town meeting. This is something we can talk about later. It provides more options for the town. If you get a piece of tax title land and you want to preserve it, maybe you can sell the development rights off of it and preserve that piece of land. Next section, the ratio of development rights, as we said, 1 to 1. So 1 development right in a sending area becomes 1 development right in a receiving area. Next section, development within the receiving area. Again, this is designed to be a process that is a special permit process review by the planning board. Several of the other bylaws I looked at had a fairly long section here that described the process of the special permit and what needed to be filed. I thought that that would probably be not necessary because I figured that the planning board runs enough special permit processes if we simply referred to the appropriate section of the town zoning bylaw that says this is how you run special permits, this is what you've got to present, and that would be sufficient. I also wanted to keep it simple by not putting in a lot of dimensional regulations. And we had talked before about how the new zoning that's in the downtown, the Village Common District zoning, was something that you were in favor of. In fact, it just passed town meeting. That gets between 15 units and 17 units per acre, along with commercial. So simply referring to the setbacks, the percent lot coverage, the parking ratios, et cetera, for that district seemed like it would be a way to go that would be simple. Maren, if we go down to the next page, please. Now, the other thing that we did was we said that because the intent here is to preserve other lands and keep them open, those open lands would never be generating any impervious surface. They would never be generating any septic flow. And so within the Littleton train station overlay district, we were saying that the planning board could waive the requirements relative to septic flow and impervious surface that were within the watershed district because you're preserving other lands that will not be built upon. And similarly, height limits, we had talked about the potential of allowing to go a little bit higher in some cases where there was topography or mature vegetation that was going to be maintained as part of the development that would screen the development from outside of the area. So therefore, the height limits that are in the Littleton Common could be waived as part of the special permit as well by the planning board. Next, getting into the payment in lieu of the privately purchased development rights. In this case, what we are suggesting is if a developer comes to you and says, I want to put 20 units on this parcel. I can't find anybody right now who wants to sell me development rights for 20 units. I would like to pay the town X number of dollars. The town could then take those X number of dollars, put them into a bank account, and then use them with the approval of town meeting, obviously, to purchase development rights where the town sees fit under its open space plan. Now, what I'm recommending is because when we were doing the analysis, we came up with that using the assessor's information, we came up with the difference in value of the farmland under the 61 program. The full value of the farmland for development purposes minus the value for farming purposes, about $11,000. When we compared that to actual purchases by the state of agricultural preservation restrictions, we found that to maybe be a little bit low. So therefore, I'm suggesting that if you are using this payment in lieu of, that it should be 1.5 times that $11,000 figure. So therefore, the town would be getting on the order of $15,000 or $16,000 per acre of or per unit of development. And we think that that also will be sustainable on the receiving area side if the density allowed is on the order of 15 units per acre. The last section is if there is a development rights bank established by the state that you could participate in that. And if it is not established by the state, then you could have your own local fund that would be capitalized by payments in lieu of, so that you could go ahead and buy these development rights at a later time. And the last part is that per your recommendations, we put in that this should be reviewed every 2 years to see how it's working. And I think I ran a little long.
Oh, but you did a great job. Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Why don't we go through it section by section and just go through the questions from everybody.
Okay, great. And Josh is here as well to answer questions that I can't.
All right, so if you could put up the first section. Past the definitions, go right to I think it's sending.
Right. Maren, can you do that from your end? Thank you.
Yep, one more down. Oh yeah, here we go. So any thoughts or comments from anybody on the board as far as this particular area? It's an interest to me. I have some comments about it, but I'd like to hear from everybody else first.
I don't think that we have used the net acreage calculation method before. Am I right in that or wrong in that?
I think you're right. I don't think there's any precedent for that.
Okay. I'm not saying it's bad.
Yep.
I don't know what to think about it.
Right. Okay. How about you, Mark?
We used to use the net acreage when we did the old open spaces. We kind of determined it that way. Then we changed from that to do a total build-out analysis. We went that way instead to find out what you could actually build rather than just go by percentages. So I don't have a problem with doing the net acreage. It's probably a cleaner way to do it. And I make them actually do a density calculation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there would be an advantage if we want to make this as easy to use as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
What about you, Anna?
So I have a question. So this is a calculation that's typically done in anything to do with TDR, Mark?
It's actually much more common in cluster subdivisions.
Okay.
It is used sometimes in TDR, but it's more commonly used in clusters. And I generally tell people that TDR is basically nothing but a discontiguous cluster. You're doing the same thing you do in a cluster where you're moving development from one area to another. Only in TDR, you're moving it a longer ways from one parcel to another instead of just moving it around on one parcel.
And based on your experience with this or understanding of it, has there ever been an issue with using it?
No, not to my knowledge, not if it's worded well. You want to make sure that it takes out the wetlands. You want to make sure that it takes out everything that you feel should be taken out. And that varies town to town. So for instance, in some municipalities, if you've got a 40,000 square foot per lot requirement, some municipalities will not allow you to have any wetlands or any flood zone within that 40,000 square foot minimum. So you could have a 55,000 square foot lot that's 15,000 square feet of wetlands and 40,000 square feet of upland, but you have to have the 40,000 square feet of upland. Other municipalities, so you can have, it doesn't matter. As long as you can fit the house, the septic system, and the well on the parcel and have all your setbacks, they don't care if 10,000 square feet of the 40,000 square foot lot is wet. So this calculation needs to be adjusted depending upon what the requirements are within the town.
Okay, thank you.
What were you going to weigh in on, Jerry? you had a question about this?
Well, Delisa. Delisa?
Sorry. I don't really have anything to add. I mean, I love the concept. I love the fact that it's a tool and it's there to use if people want to. So I'd like to hear what you have to say, Jerry, because you've really delved into this.
Well, I was thinking more of it in the terms of, so we have the process we go through for both definitive and open space, right? At the end of the day, you get a yield plan. And at that point, the land or the developer or the landowner has already designated the areas that they're going to CR and the areas that they're going to build, right? So you can see each individual lot on a picture. To me, if we made them go through that process to create their units to transfer, that would then allow a seller to say, well, I'm not going to subdivide this land per se, but I'm going to sell part of my TDR units, right? So they come in and they say, hey, I can get 50 units out of this. Let's say I only want to sell 25 this year, right? How are they really realistically going to know what part of their land they're going to CR and what part they're going to keep viable if they only want to do half of their capability? What I don't want to do is get into a situation where we're asking landowners to put CR restrictions on lots that haven't been delineated. It doesn't allow the landowner to optimize for future sales. So I was just thinking about just more mechanically, like how would you implement something like this where you're basically doing a low def sketch, and at the end of the day, you're still going to have to go and put a CR restriction on parcels of land that may or may not have been subdivided yet. So I would think the landowner would have to go through some sort of pro forma subdivision process to know where their CR is going to land. That was my concern.
But that would only be a concern if there was a parcel and they did want to subdivide it or partially do the TDR, which it's interesting. I hadn't even considered that possibility because I would think a parcel is a parcel. So your scenario is only if they want to subdivide their property, but otherwise, if they want to just put the whole property in, then.
No, I was saying only if they want to sell part of their TDR. Like, let's say they come to us and they use the net acreage yield calculation, right? So they come in front of us and they say, let's just keep it simple. I've got 100 acres and I'm going to do that 100 acres yields me 100 lots, right? And I only want to sell today 50 lots. The only way they can do that is they must have a valid CR, right, on the property, which has now been converted to TDR lots, right? So they're going to send those lots over. So at the end of the day, that landowner has to amend their deed and slap a CR on those parcels of land that have now been converted to transfer development right lots. So in that particular case, you would need to know where you're drawing your lines.
Couldn't we just require them to subdivide it before they came to the board?
Exactly. And that's my point. So it'd almost be like, you're almost basically saying, look, by default, you're going to have to come in front of us and subdivide it. And in that case, when you're doing that, you're going to need to basically come in and file an open space or a definitive subdivision plan. And my argument would be is you want them to use the bylaws that we have in place to do that gives them the greatest advantage as a landowner, right? So whatever gives them the greatest yield. So if they were to come in and then draw that and then design that, they would then therefore be able to say those portions of my land, those defined portions of my land will now carry that CR restriction, and they don't disadvantage themselves in the future when they want to sell their other 25 lots.
So basically, you want them to come in with a plan that shows definitive areas with definitive restrictions on it in perpetuity.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking you're avoiding, what I'm trying to do is avoid anything I'm trying to reduce the risk to the seller so that they don't somehow disadvantage themselves simply through a lack of ignorance. I'm trying to make it more certain.
Well, I think your example is similar to, I think what maybe Mark had said before was that a landowner doesn't have to sell it all if they wanted to save some acreage to be able to use for future college expenses or whatever. So your analogy, or that analogy, I think is what you're talking about, right, Jerry?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But I also don't think, as part of this, for things that are less than 10 acres, I don't think we should be taking that off the table. There may be opportunities that the trail committee, other committees in Littleton may look at small parcels of land as being advantageous to their needs. And if a TDR could be worked out to grab a piece of land that connects trail systems, other conservation land, open recreational use land in town, having TDR as an option for what's otherwise a non-marketable piece of property could be advantageous to a landowner and also serve the needs of the town. So I don't know that we want to take those small parcels off the table.
I thought we had a 5 acre. You think we should go below 5 acres, or?
I think you should allow any viable lot to be transferred to anybody.
Well, under the terms of, under the scenario of tax title, that's, most of the tax title lands that the town takes are really small.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it more like, hey, I got an acre. Let's just run it out. Like, let's say I have an acre next to Healy Corner, and that would substantially improve the trail system. It's not really a viable lot per se, but it could be sold. Let's say that landowner wants to sell that land. It could be an incentive for him to use TDR if he could sell that land or potentially develop that land or sell the transfer rights to that land, where he doesn't have to really do the development, but still get a financial benefit. It could just be an incentive.
I think the only problem with that is you have to make sure that what we're getting is actually really land that could potentially be developed. If you
Yeah,
start,
but again, that would be on us to make that determination at the time. Again, these are just ideas I'm throwing out. We're still going to go through a whole vetting process with the rest of the town boards, but these are just ideas, things I was thinking of to make it more enticing to have it used. Because let's face it, we have farms left, but it's not like those farms sell all that often. I just think you could do a TDR like 1 year and wait 20 years to do the next one. But in the meantime, there's other parcels of land that could have been viable.
So, Jerry, if I could, 2 points. One, I think it's an excellent thought that you have, but what to do if somebody's got 40 acres and they only want to sell the equivalent of development rights on 20 acres right now. I would suggest in that case, since I actually did this for conservation groups for years, I would work with the landowner to come up with a sketch plan so that they would know what areas they want to preserve, what areas they want to reserve for future development or for future sale. And then based upon that sketch plan, they could do a 2-lot A&R that is 1 lot, the area that they're willing to put a conservation restriction on, and the other lot, the area that they're reserving now for development. The reason I'm saying that is it's real expensive to do a subdivision, and to actually have them lay out a full subdivision and then put the restriction on on half of the lots. That's a cost that is it's pretty steep.
I agree with you, Mark, and I'm not. What I'm proposing is not actually a solution. I'm trying to think through some of the problems landowners might come across. My big concern is as we've approved certain subdivisions in the past, once we get down to decision, right, some of the things we contemplate for viability of a project come into play. Certainly wetland crossings, natural heritage, that kind of thing that require detailed planning. Let's say under your scenario, you do a sketch plan, you're taking at that time your best guess. The due diligence is really between the board and the applicant. And to the extent that we're reducing the burden, you're also reducing the efficacy of the due diligence. So now all of a sudden, let's just fast forward that 20-acre scenario. They come back in front of us and they said, well, I did the TDR. At that time, it looked like putting the CR on that parcel made the most sense. I'm now left with this parcel. Now that I've changed my mind, I want to do an open space here. Oh, by the way, I kind of disadvantaged myself because after we did the analysis, it would have been much better if I had drawn lines a different way once I've done more detailed analysis. That is certainly a scenario that could happen. And what I'm trying to say is once they put a CR on, they're not getting that off, right? It's like
Right.
once and done. So what I'm trying to do is I'm not trying to protect really the interests of the town. I'm trying to make sure that sellers, as they engage with us, have some level of assurance that their interests are being protected. And only through that due diligence is a seller really going to be assured that his interests are being protected. Now that would only be in the case, like I'm saying, where it's not done in, as 100%, right? It's where you have somebody who's only monetizing part of their asset, and leaving the other, if you will, in the bank, until they need it later. So that's all I'm thinking about is that you could be disadvantaging yourself, and you just want to make sure that we're not creating a bylaw that has unintended consequences.
Right. There's actually nothing in this bylaw that would preclude a landowner from doing a full subdivision as you have just laid out, Jerry. What it does, however, is also provide sort of a middle ground for folks who have a good idea that, this parcel over here is something they always want to keep as farmland. And this parcel over here is an area that they would consider for future development, to put the kids through college or for, a house for the grandkids. They wouldn't have to do a full development proposal on the area that they were certain that they wanted to see preserved. But
I kind of agree with Mark. They don't get a second shot at this. If they're going to do this, they got to do their homework and they got to be right the first time. They don't get a second bite at the apple. And, when I drew the line in the wrong place, I really want to kind of do it over here because this is a little bit of land. No, once this TDR goes in, it's in. So they better.
No, I mean, Mark, listen, that's everything you're saying, from a certain point of view is valid. I'm just, if you're looking at it from that angle, you're probably right. But if you're looking at it more from like, look, this is, to me, because this is not a compulsory bylaw, it's more of a product that the town is bringing in to incentivize development in a certain way, right? So we want to make it as sweet as possible for people to use, right? So one of the things you're going to want to do is make sure there's no anxiety from a landowner about, going first and somehow disadvantaging themselves to an unknown. And we have a great adversarial system on the buy side, right? Developers come in and challenge our bylaws to maximize their profit. And through that process, we all learn, right? You can exploit it that way. But from a seller's perspective, right, they're going to be engaging with a developer who is maximizing their profit from a development side. The seller is not necessarily in that position, right? You just want to make sure a seller is protected as much as possible, because think about it, the farmer who's selling that 61A property is not necessarily in the best position to know how to maximize that dollar, but the developer certainly will be because of the financing involved in doing what the developer is doing. So I'm just trying to level the playing field, if you will, for a seller, because if I'm a seller and I'm approached by a developer for a TDR, I could pass that cost for the open space plan back to the buyer. Even as a seller, they don't have to absorb that cost. So I'm just saying there may be an advantage, at least from a product side or a marketing side, to providing some surety to the seller through that due diligence process that they're not disadvantaging themselves in the
Then
future.
why
That's
don't-
all I'm saying. And I don't know if that's the right mechanism. I just think it's something.
Why don't we approach it this way then? Why don't we give the seller the option of doing either or? They can come in either way and tell us how they want to approach it. They can either do a definitive plan that shows us where it is, or give us, just like you would do if it was the whole parcel, take out the wetlands, take out the topography that doesn't make and give it to us both ways. Why don't we make it, they can give them the flexibility to do it either way.
But keep in mind, Mike, he's still going to have to spend some money, because even to do what's
Absolutely.
being asked in the calculation plan, he's still going to need to get somebody who can survey land and
You're going to have to do that no matter what.
no matter what.
We're not going to take a napkin with a little drawing on it and say, oh, this is where it's going to go. They've got it. Somebody's
Well, Mike, all right. So that's a great point. So let's explore that, right? So imagine you're creating this bylaw that outlives this board's tenure, and you want to pass a bylaw on that still meets the needs, right? When you're putting that much play in interpretation, then it's any board's interpretation. So if you really want to preserve your intent, I think you need to at least be a little bit more prescriptive. And I don't know what the right level of prescription is, but I think you want to be a little bit more prescriptive about what you're trying to achieve. And when you're leaving that kind of criteria open, I mean, we've all been through enough applications now to know what the end result can be, right? There's a lot of
I actually agree with Jerry. I totally agree with Jerry. And in fact, I was going to comment that on the definition of development right yield from sending area, that we should be much more explicit about the kind of plan that we want to accept, because right now it says this can be shown by a sketch plan. And, and I thought, okay, it needs to be more explicit, a little bit more defined.
Well, I agree. You need to. Somebody needs to do their homework. It can't just come in with, like I said, a napkin with a drawing on it.
Mike, that's a basket statement. It has to be defined with brackets.
Well-
Otherwise you're basically saying, okay, what does that mean? Well, it means something to me, it means something different to you, it means something different to Jeff, which is totally appropriate. If you want shared understanding, then you need to have enough detail in the bylaw to convey that to the average reader. That's all I'm asking for.
Well, Mark Ossico,
One way I've seen this done that is very effective, but which I was trying to avoid in this case because it's a cost. You simply say it's got to meet the standards of a Form B preliminary plan for subdivision.
Yeah, fair enough. And as defined by our bylaw. So that automatically references our bylaw.
It makes it a little bit more costly. I was trying not to go there. I was trying to have it a little bit lower than that because I trust you guys as a board to know what it is that you need. But if somebody comes in and says, I'd like to do a preliminary plan, they can still ask for waivers from you. And you can say, yeah, we know there's not, we know you're not going to go anywhere near the wetland in the back. We know there's no other wetlands on the property. Therefore, you don't have to survey your wetlands, even though that's in our preliminary plan requirement. So they can ask for waivers.
Listen, I think we're at time. So, I mean, what I'd like to close with is obviously there's a lot of discussion that needs to be done here. So a lot more to come on TDR discussions and, comments and just thinking through the process. I think right now we're sort of still in the storming phase of, how we want this to sound. And I think it would be a very good idea to invite the other boards in the town to participate in the discussion. And Mark, I'll leave it to you. I don't know what is the right form as far as soliciting those comments, whether or not, we asked Maren to go out and do that solicitation, at least, through her counterparts for the other boards to collect that information. But I think we're going to want to solicit a little aggressively to ensure that boards do in fact comment. But I think we want to put a clock on that and say, hey, we want a 30-day or 45-day comment period. And then, as I previously said, just make sure we're aggressively pursuing those comments.
which other boards besides Select Board?
Well, ZBA, Conservation Commission, anybody who has an interest. I mean, I would put it out, I would just federate it to all the boards, invite all boards to participate. And through
From the
that,
Ag Commission.
yeah, all the
I would
ones,
think the water commissioners, I mean,
I think the most important people are the large landowners. We got to get them before us to see what they think about it.
well, no, what I'm saying is right now, we're going through a board process, right? Once we go through our comment period internally, then we can open it up and we can figure out if we need to hold a forum or whatnot with large landowners, farming commission, right? I mean, there's all those people to still engage. So like I said, there's a lot more to come here, and I think there should be a large engagement effort between the boards in order to make sure that we've collected most people's thoughts, and by the time we go to a final that we propose to the town, we've done our due diligence.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, we do have a hand raised.
Okay. Who's got their hand up?
It'd be Christine Nordhaus.
Christine? Myron, you want to unmute her?
She's all set.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm simultaneously watching a Zoom concert of my musician son, and but I would definitely think that the perspective of the farmers would be important, but it also would be very biased, and so it should always be taken with a grain of salt. I'm a huge proponent of transfer of development rights. I'm really excited about this initiative. The only thing that that raised a flag for me was the idea that you could relax septic flows and impervious surfaces in water in aquifer protection areas. And I would say protecting our aquifer is a really important thing in Littleton right now, and I'm sure it will be down the road. And so if you are picking this thing apart with the other boards, I would just ask that you definitely include CONSCOM, but also just keep that idea in mind about not ever relaxing aquifer protection area restrictions. Just or if you do, that you make an exchange with the transfer that is of an equal environmental impact and importance to, I think you know what I'm getting at. So that was
Well,
my
Christine,
comment.
I mean, if I can comment on that, Christine, this is exactly the kind of comment that helps with the discussion, because I think there's a part to this, and this is where it helps us with communicating the intent. A TDR seller is actually not going to they're not going to build a stick of wood on their land.
I know.
They'll never impact an aquifer or anything. It all comes down to how we calculate the yield off of that land to be put somewhere else in town, right?
Right.
And so there's a few other, and I know we're way over time now, but there's a few other components to this, particularly the receiving areas that we haven't discussed yet, as far as how those receiving areas may or may not need to be conditioned to absorb the excess density that will come into those areas through those transfers. Because essentially what you're saying is, here's a bunch of land that could have been developed. And again, let's just keep the numbers easy. Let's just say there's 100 units available to be built in 61A and 60A land. What we're really saying is, hey, you can now take those 100 units and build them somewhere else in Littleton.
No, I know, and I'm excited, super excited about that. But I think it was with the comment with the station, the Littleton station area. So sort of securing the transfer of development rights to develop Littleton Station is exciting to me, and I'm really psyched about it. But the sort of comment about being able to relax septic flows or pavement in that area as a result of the transfer just makes me a little bit nervous. I would want to make sure that the stuff that will never be developed would protect the aquifer as part of the exchange. I think, do you know what I'm getting at?
I totally understand what you're getting at. And this,
Okay,
I think,
cool.
goes, some of my earlier comments in regards to some of the other bylaw work we've done is there's, the whole is often greater than the sum of its parts, right? So when you think about TDR and you think about density loading certain areas of town, we don't necessarily have the infrastructure in place to absorb the density because we're largely a rural town in transition, correct? So when you think about saying, hey, if the 61A land could yield 1,000 units spread out across, say, 10 square miles, you're now going to change that math and say that same density is now going to exist on 20 acres. And so
Yeah,
you
it's
are
cool.
going to need different infrastructure to support that. And that is all part of the larger master plan. So as we've looked through these bylaws and we brought other bylaws into play, like form-based code and now the train station discussion and you overlay TDR, along with even the overlay districts downtown, you're going to need to consider the fact that you've got to find a home for this density. And along with that, the bylaw changes, you're going to need to advocate and financially support infrastructure changes, i.e. sewer, to
Yeah.
absorb that kind of density in a small place. All of these things need to happen in a sequence in order for something like TDR to actually be viable. Even if it's voted in, it still may not be deployable because there's no place to dump the density.
I have plenty of ideas, but that's for another conversation. Thank you
Right.
for answering
Thank
my
you.
question.
All right, so listen, we're running it kind of late. Anybody else have any questions? So we're gonna send this out to the different boards, get some feedback back from the other boards. And
I
then,
have just a quick comment from Mark Resico that I'm a picture is 1,000 words, guys, and that graphic that you included in the memo to Anna is perfect.
Yeah.
The 3 squares.
That was actually what I sent to him.
Oh, good. Well, then I'm
I think it was originally.
congratulating you. Yeah, that was great because it's,
Take credit for that.
yeah, that was great. That's it.
it's good. All right, well, I guess we're all done with this, so we're going to close this. We'll send it off. Mark, you've done a great job as always. We'll send it to the other boards, get their input, and circle back around with this, correct?
Whatever next meeting you'd like us to be at, we'd be glad to be there.
Okay.
Would you like any changes to this memo before it goes out?
Okay, yeah, so why don't we do that? So now,
Yeah, Mark, I'll work with you on what I heard at the meeting and then plus fleshing out the graphic to go with it.
Okay.
I think it'll be
great,
helpful.
thank you, Mark. All right, so we have to close this meeting, shut down, and go into executive session. Is that what we have to do?
Yeah, as soon as you say the magic word. So you'll notice that posted on the agenda, you had executive session to discuss the appeal of the Healy Corner decisions.
So do we have to close this and pick up a new Zoom link?
You will, and then you'll have to vote by roll call vote to move to executive session and to not reconvene in open session before you close.
Oh, God. Maybe
We have to adjourn this meeting, right?
yeah, so
Thank you, Mark.
I'll entertain a motion. Thank you, Mark, by the way. I'll entertain a motion to close this meeting and then open up in executive session.
No.
Nope.
Can't do it that way?
No, you're going to move to go into executive session
right.
for purposes of discussing strategy with respect to pending litigation. We're doing so in open session would have a detrimental impact on the board's litigating position.
What he said.
And the board will not be reconvening in open session at the conclusion of the executive session.
I guess.
Don't move.
All right.
Second,
Jerry,
Yep.
Jeff,
Yes.
Elisa,
Yes.
Anna.
yes.
I am a yes. So do you have the link there for us, Maren, to close and go back to?
Would you like me to resend to you?
No, I'm assuming it's still there. All right. All right. Now let everyone think smart enough they can
You
get.
getting out of this? Wait, why can't you just open another room?
No,
So we leave now?
I guess we leave now.
Okay.